Hello, and welcome to the Art of Selling Used Fire Trucks, presented by Command Fire Apparatus. At the end of today's presentation, Glenn will be answering your questions live. For those joining us on Zoom, please use the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll address your questions at the end of the broadcast. So without further ado, please welcome Command Fire Apparatus owner, Chief Glenn Usdin.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining us. Last week, we had a good webinar. It was viewed by almost 3,000 people between live and also being shared on Facebook. And we talked about buying used fire trucks. This week, we're going to talk about selling used fire trucks. Some of the concepts and information I'm going to present to you is a little controversial. I want you to bear with me. And first, I want to give you a little bit of background on myself, because basically everybody asks, who the heck is this guy telling us about fire trucks? I am truly a fire truck guy. One of my earliest memories was growing up in the New York metropolitan area. And in 1959, my parents brought me to the closest engine company to my grandparents' house in Brooklyn. And I remember walking and getting a tour of that beautiful Aaron's Fox fire company in FDNY. In 1974, I joined the local neighborhood fire department. It's called the Massapequa Fire Department, one of the busiest and bigger fire departments on Long Island. We went to roughly 2,000 calls a year, a combination of fire and EMS. Very busy fire department. At some points in the 70s and early 80s, we would go to 3 or 4 working fires a month. I can remember multiple days when it was 5 or 10 degrees out, where we sometimes had 2 or 3 working fires a day. We went to a lot of fires, got a lot of experience, and learned a lot about fire trucks. In 1989, I moved my company, Command, back then it was called Northeast Fire Apparatus, to Lancaster, Pennsylvania. And I became the fire chief for 16 years of the Lancaster Township Volunteer Fire Department, which is a suburban fire department that does approximately 600 runs a year in South Central Pennsylvania. We're about an hour west of Philadelphia, about a half hour east of the state capital, Harrisburg. I still remain as the assistant fire chief and went to a couple of runs this morning already. Right out of high school, I really didn't know what the heck I wanted to do. And one of the members of the volunteer fire department, the Massapequa Fire Department, was the Mack Fire Apparatus salesman that covered the entire New York metropolitan area. And his name was Carl Toogie, and we just had a 93rd birthday party for him about 3 weeks ago. And I thought he had the coolest job in the world, running around with brand new Mack Fire Apparatus and showing them to customers and selling them and delivering them. So I said, hey, I'd like to do something with you. And it was instant love. And Carl and I would run all over Long Island, New York, Westchester County, showing Mack fire trucks and teaching people how to use them and delivering them. And 2 or 3 times a month on Saturdays, we would load up some customers and get in the van and drive to the Mack Fire Apparatus factory at that point in downtown Allentown, Pennsylvania. It was about 3 hours away from Long Island, and show customers their trucks being built. So I got a really good education that showed me how fire trucks were built, what customers wanted, and how to take care of customers. Something funny that I like to say to people, and if you come to my shop, you'll see this, that today I own the first rig, the first unit that I was assigned to. It was a 1963 Mack ladder truck that was the first diesel-powered fire apparatus on Long Island. It got sold to a fire department outside of Pittsburgh, and in the mid-1990s, I sold them a newer LTI aerial platform, and I got a chance to buy that truck back up. After I was working with the Mack Fire Apparatus salesman Carl for a number of years, I got a position as the associate publisher of Fire Engineering magazine, and I worked for Fire Engineering a number of years. And then I became the East Coast manager for Task Force Tips Nozzles, and covered from North Carolina to Maine with all the TFT products. And in 1987, I started a used fire truck business with my wedding money. My wife was a little upset about that, but I bought a used fire truck for $3,500 and sold it to a department in Illinois. And there, the used fire truck business was started. Slide. So this is a picture of the 1963 Mack ladder truck that I used to run. That is a very skinny Glenn Usdin on the turntable running that truck. It was my favorite truck in the world to drive. It had two outriggers, hydraulic outriggers that came straight down, and then you just lifted it up. And that was in service in Massapequa Fire Department from 1963 until 1983 when we got a aerial tower. Next slide. Since I purchased that truck, we've repainted it and relettered it, and I still bring it up to Long Island every few years for parades and go over to it every single day and rub the fenders and kiss her. That truck, I drove it to hundreds, if not thousands of calls, and that is the start of my fire apparatus career. So I am very happy to tell you that I'm a Mack guy, and let me show you the next slide. When you come to my shop, you'll also see that I own this 1984 Mack CF pumper. And the significance of this truck is this is the last fire truck that Mack ever built. This is the last complete fire truck that was built at the Mack factory in Macungie, Pennsylvania. And after that, for a few more years, they made the CF chassis, but this is the actual last one that went down the assembly line. And I own it. And again, every day I go and I wish it good luck. And when the summer coming up, we'll shine it up and take it outside. And there's buffs always stop by to take a picture of it. And we take it to local parades and other fire service events. And it is pretty much as nice today as the day it was delivered. It was originally delivered to the Westbury Fire Department on Long Island. Next slide. So now you know a little bit about me. The topic we're talking about is selling used fire apparatus. And I asked this question, and I wish you could all answer quickly or raise your hand, but I asked this question to everybody. When does the process of selling your fire apparatus start? And the answer is really simple. When you sit down to order your new apparatus. A lot of people fail to appreciate that new fire apparatus is an investment that depreciates. So the financial considerations are critical, and there's so much that you need to know. And if you look at selling a used fire truck as an investment, and then you look at it as a process, you'll find that you're so much ahead of the game when it comes time to sell it. And I'm going to give you another example. I believe that almost everybody that's listening to the webinar is a firefighter. And the name of my company is Command Fire Apparatus. And I also previously ran a command training school called Command School. So I took the name from that. And one of the things that we used to teach in command school was that if you pull up to a fire and there's a working fire, doesn't matter if there's people trapped or the building's burning, whatever it is, that is the wrong time. In fact, it's impossible to teach your troops firefighting and fire command. And the reason I mentioned that story is that it's too late when you have a 10, 15, or 20-year-old fire truck to just decide you want to sell it. If you want to be a progressive fire department, you need to go all the way back and say, when we sit down and we specify and order our new apparatus, you want to see what it's going to be worth, how much it costs, how long you're going to keep it. So this is a very important concept. And when you do that, you're basically running your fire department like a business instead of just throwing money away and hoping it comes back. Now, the next concept that you need to be important and be to realize is that at 20 to 25 years, an apparatus is worth about 10% of what it costs new. So a ladder truck that in 1998, 1999, 2000 cost $600,000 or $7,000 new. 20 to 25 years later, it's worth about $60,000, $70,000. What I want some of you to go back to your municipalities and go back to your board of directors is to get your people onto a 10-year replacement process. And I'm going to explain to you the reasons and how that works. If you sell your trucks when they're 10 years old, they are worth between 40 and 50% of original cost. The maintenance is always very low in the first 10 years because for 5 years, you probably have an engine and transmission warranty. For 1 or 2 years, you have a warranty from the original manufacturer. And the next 3 to 5 years, you have very, very low maintenance. You rarely have an engine fail in the first 10 years. You very rarely will have a pump fail. You very rarely will have the transmission go bad. You very rarely will have major electrical problems. chassis problems, any of those things. So in the first 10 years of apparatus, the maintenance is extremely low. The next line in here is the differential point between resale and purchase is best at that 10-year point. Next slide. You there? There you go. Another thing to keep in mind, and I show you a picture, this is at the FDNY shops. One of the things that's very important is what we call standardization of the fleet. And if you look, there are approximately 15 or 20 doors in the picture. And you say, why is that important? Well, every single Seagrave ladder or pumper that they have in FDNY, the doors are interchangeable and they specify that. So if you have a fleet of units that everything is standardized, you make it easier for maintenance, you make it easier for your operators, you make it easier for the people who fix and repair your apparatus. So I know that every fire department is not FDNY, but I just want to keep in mind, I want you to keep that in mind, that once you find a apparatus that you like, standardizing the fleet is very important for you and it saves you money in the long run. Next slide. So again, we were talking about depreciation and the units. This is a brand new 75-foot Seagrave aerial scope, or as New York City calls them, tower ladder. New York City has a rule that they keep their apparatus in frontline service for 10 years, 11 months, and 30 days. So at the end of the 10-year, 11th month, and 30 days, which we would call 11 years, that must be taken out of frontline service. It can be used as a reserve or a spare truck. New York City is planning for the obsolescence of the truck, and they will replace that. And as I said, it can either be a spare truck or a reserve truck, but it will no longer be a first due truck. And they have realized that at 10 years, that's basically the optimum point at which the trucks get the most service out of them. And they also require the least amount of maintenance, and that is built in. It's built into their union contract. So if you go into the shops and in FDNY, and you look, they have a chart and they will tell you for the next 10 to 20 years, how many engines, ladders, rescues, tillers, tower ladders they are going to order. So they're not basically deciding, oh, we need 3 trucks this year, or we need 5 trucks this year, or we need 7 engines this year. That's all charted out. And again, based on that 10 years, 11 months, and 30 days. If FDNY can do it, your department can do it also. Next slide. So this is a picture of my newest engine in my fire department, and I practice what I preach. And this is a 2018 Pierce Rescue Pumper. It cost $970,000 when it was brand new, and it is slated to be in service for 10 years. Next slide. So this is a 2015 Pierce in my fire department. It cost us $650,000 new. We are going to sell it in 2025. We're going to order a new pumper in 2024. The truck cost $650,000 when we purchased it in 2015. We know that we will get approximately $300,000 for it. So taking the calculations I just gave you, if we're going to get $300,000 for it, and a new one is going to cost about $850,000 for the same specs, because the price of apparatus goes up roughly 4 to 5% per year. So when we buy the new one, we're going to get $300,000 for the old one. The new one's going to cost $850,000, and that'll be a $550,000 spread between the cost of selling what we realize from selling the used one to what the new one is going to cost. Most of the people that we're talking with and that are involved in used fire apparatus say, oh no, we're going to keep our trucks, our engines, our rigs for 20 years. So using this same piece of apparatus, instead of selling it in 2025 when it was 10 years old, if we go out 10 more years, so we're going to keep it for 20 years, at that point, we're going to get roughly $30,000 to $50,000, maybe $60,000 for the same unit when it's 20 years old. However, in an additional 10 years, the $850,000, which we estimate to replace it in 2025, in 2035, that new truck is going to cost maybe 1.1 or 1.2 million. So the difference, the spread, is over 1.1 million. That's the difference between what you will get for the used one and what the cost of the new one is. And if you put that chart to any municipality, they will see that there's a lot of money to be saved by getting the trucks out in the 10 years or 12 or 15. If you can't do in 10 years, 12 or 15 is going to work, but you will save a lot of money. And they also, very important thing that everybody has to agree on, there's no if or ands about this. In the second 10 years or the 10 to 20 years, something on that truck is going to break. I can't predict if it's going to be the engine. I can't tell you if it's going to be the transmission. I can't tell you if it's going to be the fire pump. I can't tell you if the springs are going to go bad. Something is going to go bad. Even now in the newer units, we talk about a lot of electrical problems, but something in the second 10 years is going to go bad, and it's not going to be covered by any warranty, and you're going to be stuck with a repair. And I tell people that when you have a pumper, you have to put a minimum of $5,000 per year maintenance reserve in the truck, whether it's a new truck or a used truck. You might go 1 year, 2 year, 3 year with just spending $1,500 for a state inspection and an oil change. But maybe in the 5th year or the 8th year, you'll need all new tires and you'll spend $3,000, $4,000. And maybe in the 6th year, the pump might go bad and you'll spend anywhere from $10,000 to $20,000, or the engine could need an overhaul, or anything major is going to happen. And these fire trucks, all of them break. If anybody could manufacture a fire truck that didn't break, you'd be a billionaire, not even a millionaire, a billionaire. So in that second 10 years of ownership, all those bad things generally are going to happen to you. And you have to add that onto the spread between the cost of replacing the truck and the cost of the new truck. So at that 10-year point, those two, if you looked at it on a graph, you will see that they will be the closest point together is the 10 years. When you sell them at less than 10 years, the spread is not as great, because as anyone knows, if you right now bought a Ford F pickup truck and paid $60,000 for it and drove it around the block and brought it back into the dealer, he's going to give you 40 or 45,000 because he can't sell it as a new truck anymore. So the spread is a little bit steep, the difference when you're less than 5 years old. But between 5 and 10 or 5 and 12 years old is we call it the sweet spot. That's the best time to sell your used apparatus. And again, for very, very small fire departments that have next to no budget, this isn't going to apply. But for departments in suburban areas that outside the major cities, like this area here in Pennsylvania, and where I'm from in the New York metropolitan area, and the Washington metropolitan area, and Dallas and San Francisco, and all those areas around the country, for your suburban departments, I would like you to get into the concept of selling the trucks when they're much newer, and you're actually going to save a lot of money, save a lot of headaches, and really be a much more efficient. And the one other hidden benefit from selling them when they're fairly new is you constantly are keeping up with technology. So when I showed you that picture of that 1963 Mack ladder truck, that truck lasted in my fire department for 20 years. We got rid of it in 1983. Well, I had a 5-speed manual transmission, and the last 3 to 4 years that truck was in service in Massapequa, we were down to less than half of the drivers were actually able to shift a manual transmission on a diesel fire truck. I know the transmissions today are almost always automatic, but there's many, many things that we can't even predict. None of us could predict 10 or 20 years ago that we would have an iPhone that had more computer power than what put the lunar module on the moon in 1969. So I can't predict the safety. I can't predict the technology. I can't predict any of the things that are going to be in fire trucks in 10, 15, 20 years down the line. But I can predict with 100% certainty that there's going to be something on that fire truck that you're going to go to a trade show, when we ever have trade shows again, and say, boy, I wish we could have bought that. So when you take those trucks and you get rid of them when they're 10 years old, you're going to be able to keep ahead of the technology and the safety. Next slide. Okay, so these are the things that when we're specifying the trucks that are most important, and I like to stress that to people. The big thing, the first thing you have in large capital letters there is large booster tanks. I could go on and give you a 30-minute speech as a fire chief. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to just give you the facts that when people call me up or send me an email and say, Glenn, we're interested in a used fire truck, nobody ever calls and says, I want a 500-gallon booster tank. The entire secondary market, that is every single fire department that calls me for a used fire truck, says we would like a 750 or prefer a 1,000-gallon booster tank. Now, I would not expect you to specify and carry around 1,000-gallon of water in a suburban application. It's just not needed. I can tell you that if you go from a 500 to a 750-gallon tank, that extra 250 gallons of water is A, going to give you 2 to 3 minutes of attack time. So that's the fire chief hat speaking. And B, the resale value of that truck might be double with a 750 tank over a 500-gallon tank. And every day, including 2 phone calls that I received this morning, every single day, somebody calls me up and says, I really like that truck, but my board of directors or my town supervisors will not let me buy something with less than 1,000 gallons. I can sometimes convince them to go with a 750. I can never get anybody who wants 1,000 gallons to buy a 500-gallon tank. So 500-gallon tanks are strictly go to fire departments that have a very small area where they're fully hydranted. They will not buy a 500-gallon tank if it is if it's a rural or a non-hydranted area. So that's the most important thing. The next thing is very small when you're purchasing the truck, but it's a big deal 10, 15, 20 years down the line. Corrosion resistant material. You want to make sure that the body is either aluminum or stainless steel, or it is a very, very, very well constructed galvanneal steel, which is a steel that does not rust. One of the big things that people talk about, and it's down a little bit lower, is they get turned off by corrosion. And particularly, we sell lots of used trucks down in the South and in the Midwest, and they have all seen and had bad experiences with trucks from the East Coast that are eaten up with rust. Generally, those are trucks from the 60s, 70s, and 80s before the manufacturers got really good. However, to this day, there are still trucks with bad frames out there. And if you look at on our Facebook page, there is a link to the webinar we did last week, and I had some undercarriage and frame pictures that were absolutely eaten up. So corrosion resistant material, that's important. If we're talking about a ladder truck, again, I'm going to put my sales hat on and take my fire chief hat off. Ladder trucks with pumps sell twice as quickly and for probably 2 or 3 times as much. And I have, where I'm the assistant chief, I have a 95-foot Seagrave aerial scope without a pump, and I prefer a ladder truck without a pump. However, in the general market, you will find that people will not buy ladder trucks without pumps when we go around the country. One of the big reasons is that a lot of these smaller departments are faced with very low ISO ratings. So having that pump and a tank on a ladder truck, they get credit for both the ladder truck and the pump. There's also a perception that I believe is not true, but there is a perception that a ladder truck without a pump is difficult to operate. I've been going to fires now for over 40 years. Every major fire I've been to, the ratio of pumpers to ladders is sometimes 4, 5, 6 to 1. There's 6 or 8 pumpers on a scene when there's only sometimes 1 or 2 ladder trucks. So I don't think that you need to have a pump on that truck to put it out. I also believe that if you do have a pump on your ladder truck, you need to have an operator on the side at the pump panel, and you always need to have an operator if the aerial's in service at the turntable. So some of you are going to say I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth. I'm just giving it to you straight. Ladder trucks without pumps are difficult to sell. The next criteria, low hours and miles. I just, within the last 24 hours, spoke to a fire department that has a 10-year-old pumper and 75-foot quint that have almost 200,000 miles on them each. They are almost impossible to sell. Small fire departments do not want to buy trucks with high hours and miles. So if you are going to turn your trucks over and run a lot of hours and miles on them, you must turn them over sooner rather than later. When you get much over 100,000 miles or 10,000 hours, even if they're good trucks in good shape, they're hard to sell. The next one is also in capitals, annual pump and aerial tests. The next question that everybody asked me after they asked me if the truck has any corrosion is, is the truck currently certified with both a pump and ladder test? If I can't answer that, yes, I might as well just hang up the people because they're not going to buy the truck. So it's incumbent upon you to get your truck serviced and have an annual pump and aerial test every year and keep the records. Next one we talked about earlier, clean underside. It takes 5 minutes when you take the trucks outside in the cold weather when there's salt or chemicals on the road. It takes 5 minutes to get that garden hose underneath and wash off the underside. Some of the cleanest used trucks that I buy, and I've been buying trucks for over 40 years now, come from the Chicago area, the Buffalo and upstate New York area. Those are some of the heaviest snow areas with salt and chemicals in the country. But the fire departments in those areas know that their trucks would be eaten up if they don't keep them clean, so they keep them clean. So it's very important. The next one, really, really very important and simple for you to do: maintenance, service records, and manuals. It's incumbent upon you that not only do you take care of your fire trucks, but you have to record that. And a lot of departments, there are various software systems that you can buy. There are other fire departments that keep all the maintenance in a folder or in a binder. But as long as you keep the maintenance service records, it's vital, because people will ask, do you have maintenance and service records on this truck? And sometimes I have units that look like they're brand new. They might be 10 or 15 years old, and they literally look like they're brand new. But without those maintenance service records, it's difficult to convince somebody who's 500 or 800 miles away how beautiful the truck is. But if I can show them that every year the truck went in for an annual service, and I can show them that every time something as simple as a bulb or a switch malfunction, they got it fixed, that's helpful. And also with that concept is keep the manuals with the truck. I know that many people will get those big thick manuals. They're almost they used to be the size of a phone book. Today, many of the manuals from many of the manufacturers come in a DVD or CD, whatever it is. Keep those manuals, put them not on the truck, but put them someplace in an office. And when you sell the fire truck, you're going to be able to give the manuals with it and also the maintenance service records. The next one, something that, again, is very difficult concept for everybody to agree on: color, color, and color. On the right is a beautiful 95-foot Mac aerial scope that we sold to a fire department in Western Pennsylvania. That is their colors. When they sold it, we sold to them, and then they ran it for about 10 years, and they upgraded to a newer truck. They had a heck of a time selling that truck. And the reason they had a heck of a time was the color. If you drive across the United States like I do, and you go almost anywhere in the country, you will very rarely see a firehouse that has trucks of different color in the same firehouse. One of the things that is a sense of pride with everybody is that the units look as close as they can to each other. So unless you find a firehouse or a fire department that has off-color trucks, it's going to be very difficult to sell anything that's off-color. It's not telling you that you shouldn't have company pride and have blue trucks, black trucks, green trucks, yellow trucks, whatever. But I'm just going to tell you up front that the color really affects the value of the used unit, and anything that is non-standard. And today I would say the colors that are standard are red, red and white, or red and black, or all white. Those are generally what we would call the standard colors that you can sell. So just keep in mind that if you're specifying and buying a truck that is an off color, you are going to take a hit at the time of the sale. The next two are important. Don't buy a one-off unit. And a one-off unit, in my definition, is something that is built, specified by you to be so different that nobody else is buying anything like it. And while I certainly believe that you should purchase apparatus that fit your first due area, but if you buy something that's so totally strange that nobody else is going to see the need for it, and then call me up and say, Glenn, I'd like you to sell my blank, 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 and it's got these really strange features that, boy, the manufacturer never built one like this before, I'm going to tell you that you're probably going to have a hard time take either a great hit in selling the unit in the value, or be unable to sell it. And the last one, if anybody, any of my friends that sell new apparatus are listening, they're going to cringe, and I'll probably get some dirty emails, but don't buy the first of anything. And the reason for that is very simple. Every 5, 7, 8 years, every manufacturer comes out with some new concepts. I'm not even going to name what they could be. You know, you see the ads, you see the Facebook and all the things, and they come out with a new something. Most of them are really good ideas. However, occasionally, some of them don't work out. And if you buy the first of any new design and 2 years, 3 years, 4 years down the line, the manufacturer decides that they're not going to offer it anymore, you've got something that when the truck is 5 years old or 10 years old, everybody knows that the manufacturer no longer makes that unit. They only built 30 of them, and none of the people that bought them are happy. So if you really want to maximize the value of your used units, take some time. Don't buy the first of anything. Let it get out there. Let them do their concept pieces. Let them do the demonstrations. Let a few people buy them. Let them be in service for a year or two. They'll probably, the manufacturer, and really all the manufacturers are reputable, they'll come up with any fixes or changes to it, and then they will include those changes on the second year or third year of production, and then you can buy it, and then you'll be in good shape. But these are the things that you want to definitely keep important when you're selling, excuse me, when you're purchasing a used apparatus. Next slide. So when to sell? That's a question that comes up frequently, and there are a couple of different answers. Number one, that's probably the answer. If I asked you, the survey says, well, that would be the number one answer when you're buying a new unit. That definitely is 75, 80% of the new units that are sold in the United States are sold when somebody's buying a new unit. However, there are other reasons that people sell used fire trucks. And the second one is when a unit no longer serves your area. And you ask me, what are you talking about? Well, pretty simple. We see a lot of departments, and for instance, right now on my website, I have a Freightliner pumper tanker that the fire department no longer has a non-hydrant area. So they have no need to carry around 2,500 gallons out of the station that is located in, because the area where that was located and a similar, they had a twin to it about 3 years ago, that they're no longer are short on water supply or hydrant. So instead of keeping the trucks for 30 years or 25 years till they get almost nothing for them, they sold those trucks. They're just no longer serving their needs. The next one, fire departments go out of business. If you look on the internet and you follow firehouse.com or any of the major fire website services, you will see at least once or twice a month a fire department that is either absorbed into another fire department, or for whatever reason, the municipalities will take them out of business and say, you're no longer our fire service provider. It happens all the time. And when those fire departments go out of business, sometimes there are very good buys to be had. You have to be careful, because if the fire department is going out of business, more than likely they haven't had a lot of extra money to take care of the units. So you want to check the units very closely. But fire departments go out of business at least probably 1 or 2 a week. I know at least 3 or 4 a month across the United States, and they will have trucks for sale. And then the last one is can no longer afford the payments. And again, you say, well, how could a fire department buy $1 million truck or a $2 million truck or something expensive and not afford the payments? And I get 1 or 2 late model trucks a year, probably even maybe a little bit more, where there's absolutely nothing wrong with the truck. However, they purchased the truck and they thought they were going to have a contract for another area, or they thought their fund drive was going to bring in more money, or whatever reason, and they thought they could afford a $4,000 or $5,000 a month payment on the lease or the purchase contract with the financial institution, and they can no longer afford that. So we will frequently see sometimes trucks 1, 2, 3 years old that are being sold because the people can no longer afford the payments. And instead of sending the fire department into bankruptcy, it's simpler and easier for them to just sell the unit. So every time you see a late model new truck, don't assume that it's a lemon, there's something wrong with it. Ask and find out why the reason that it's being sold. And I mention that because I'm coming to you on the internet, and I can tell you that whenever I place a 1, 2, 3-year-old truck on my website or my Facebook page, there are hundreds of messages that I don't even see, with people saying that the truck was rolled over, the truck was in an accident, the truck's been a lemon since it was new, there was all kinds of problems with the truck, and generally none of them are true. So find out from the people selling a truck why there is, and there can be some really good buys from some 3, 5, 7-year-old trucks that there's not a darn thing wrong with them, but they're just for sale at an earlier than most people would consider. Next slide. Okay, methods of selling trucks. This is important, and gets to the meat of what we're doing. The first method, and this was the method that was in place for probably the first 100 years that people sold fire trucks, was from fire department to fire department. Generally, before the internet age, they would go from smaller to smaller fire departments in the same local area. And for instance, on Long Island, where I'm from, there are a number of fire departments that have multi-million-dollar annual budgets, and there are other small fire companies that only go to 100 or 200 calls that have budgets less than $40,000, $50,000 a year. So they would go from fire department to fire department. Your fire department might have a relationship with a small fire department in another part of the state. There frequently are members that are members of one department and they retire to another area 100 or 200 miles away, and they live there, or they have vacation homes there, and they become friendly with the people in that fire department, and fire department X will sell everything that they own when they're 5, 10, 20 years old. They will sell them to another fire department. Today, if you go anywhere on the internet, you will see fire departments selling trucks directly to other fire departments. The advantage of that to fire departments is that if you're the buying fire department, you go to visit the truck and it's in the firehouse and you get to see it. The advantage to the selling fire department is they basically sell it right to another fire department. The disadvantage to that is there's no guarantee that it's going to sell. And the other really key disadvantage to the fire department that's buying the truck is when they go look at it, if it needs anything, if it needs some pump work, if it needs some cosmetic work, even something as simple as the names taken off and relettered, the selling fire department is, we call it the concrete warranty. Once it leaves their concrete ramp, it's off warranty. So fire department to fire department is really good for trucks that are in like new condition, almost perfect, don't need a single thing, don't even need a seat reupholstered or anything, don't need any pump work. However, again, keep in mind that when one fire department is selling to another fire department, they're not in the fire truck business. They just will sell it to you, and it's pick it up and take it home and thank you, goodbye. The next group of people that sell used fire trucks are brokers. And brokers are just like real estate brokers. They list units, they don't own them, and they will have a listing of units. And sometimes some of the brokers might have 100 or 200 units on their website. And again, for units that are in almost like new condition, that are priced right, that can be an excellent resource for you. However, once again, the same disadvantages apply, that the brokers don't do any repairs on the truck. They don't fix the truck. If you say, well, these seats need to be reupholstered, or there's an oil leak, or 4 gauges on the pump panel aren't working, the brokers are just going to say, look, you looked at the truck. Do you want to buy it? Yes or no? Many of the reputable brokers will help you with things like transportation, but which is getting the truck home, but they really can't do very much more. The brokers could be located in New England or Canada, and the fire truck is in Missouri, and the people who want to buy it are in South Dakota. And everybody is a distance from each other, and it's just it has its advantages, because if a truck is really nice and it's priced right, they will sell it and they will put everybody together. But there's also disadvantages. The next group of sellers selling ways to sell used fire truck are dealers like myself. There's probably 5 or 6 big dealers in the country. We're one of them. Brindley Mountain down in Alabama is another very reputable company. There are a number of dealers who do good business. And dealers like myself, we actually buy the fire truck. So when you call us up to sell a truck, I'm going to give you a price, and that is a cash price. I'm going to say, okay, I'll give you $50,000 for the truck. And people say to me, well, what's the commission, or what are the fees? I said, no, there's no commission. There's no extra fees. I'm going to give you $50,000. I'll give you a deposit now, and when your new one comes in, we'll send a driver and come pick it up and take it home. So to a lot of people, they know that they could get $10,000, $15,000, $20,000, sometimes more for the truck if they sold it directly. But they're in the firefighting business. Particularly, most of the people that we do business with are volunteers. They don't want to be showing customers the truck. They don't want to be answering questions from customers. They don't want to be crawling underneath the truck taking pictures of the oil pan, which I was doing this morning for a customer. They don't want to be making videos. They don't want to be measuring the trucks. They don't want to be sending 20 emails with copies of all the maintenance records. They're very happy to call a dealer like myself, like Command Fire Apparatus, and say, if we get $50,000, we're fair. I know you're going to make money on it. Just get the truck out of here. So that's what dealers. The next method is sealed bid. And sealed bids generally go along with fire department to fire department, but anybody could buy it. A lot of fire departments are what we call fire districts or municipalities, and they can't just sell a truck outright. They cannot take a $50,000 check from my company. Their municipal law says that anything over a certain amount of money, let's say $10,000, must be by bid. So they will put a notice in the paper and say that the XYZ fire district or the village of XYZ is selling a 2002 Pierce with 25,000 miles, and it's got a 1,500 GPM pump and a 1,000-gallon booster tank, and you can inspect the truck at such and such a date. The sealed bid, the problem with the sealed bid is that there are no warranties, there are no guarantees. When you buy a truck on sealed bid, it's come and get it. And this is very similar to the next one on the list, which is an auction. And in the last 10 years, a number of auction sites like Gov Deals and Absolute Auctions have come up. And that's very similar also to an auction, with the difference is that when you buy the truck through the auction website, you will find that the auctioneer, the auction company, gets a commission. They range anywhere from 6 or 8% on up to 12.5%. So if you bid $50,000 to buy a truck, you need to know that you're going to pay another $6,000 or $7,000 to the auction site. The other very important consideration for an auction site is that they have a very, very, very short time period where you must purchase the truck. So if there was an auction, I saw an auction last night for a pumper tanker on Gov Deals, and the auction closed at 9 p.m. last night. I believe you have 5 business days to wire the money. When you sign up for the auction site, you sign a electronic form saying that you will pay for it within the stated period of time, and they basically they will lock your account if you don't pay for it, and they reserve the right to sue you for the amount of money. So when you bid at an auction, and let's say you bid 50,000, you owe them another 10 or 12%, so another $5,000 or $7,000. Plus, you probably have 5 days, 7 days. I think 7 days is pretty much the max on any of the auction sites where you have to pay for the truck. So if you're going to bid on an auction or a sealed bid, you have got to have the money in hand. Whereas I get one call a day from somebody, and I spoke to 2 different people this morning who said they're talking to financial institutions to get financing. However, they probably want to have the financing for 2 or 3 weeks, possibly 30 days before it's closed. And I say, if you put a down payment on the truck, it's your truck. I'll put it on the side of my warehouse and you can get the truck, in 30 days, and that'll give us time to service it and letter it and all the other things. When you sell a truck on an auction, that none of that exists. So if you're purchasing a truck on auction, you are basically buying it where is, as is. And where is, as is means that even if they say the truck is in this condition, they are not guaranteeing. So you can take that truck, and if the engine doesn't work or the transmission doesn't go into gear or the pump is frozen, you can fight them. But generally, once you say that you're going to buy the truck at auction, you can't go back and say, well, this is broken or that broken. So you're really in a bind, and you have to be extremely careful when you're buying it at auction. Dealers like myself, I will buy trucks, probably 1 or 2 a month at auction, but I'm willing to take the risk. If I buy something for $50,000, that I'm not going to have to put in another $50,000 for it. You, as your fire department, with your own money, you could get a really good deal. You also could get stuck, and you get stuck very badly. And it's very difficult to go back to your board of directors or go back to your taxpayers and say, we just bought something for $50,000, but just to get it to start, we need to put another $20,000 into it. So that's an important thing. And the last way that trucks are sold is a consignment. I don't do consignment generally. However, I know some of my competitors do. But even once or twice a year, we do a consignment. And what a consignment means is that you will take a truck on consignment and you'll have it on your lot, and you do not have the title to it. And then when you sell it, you will put the proceeds, send the proceeds back to the people who own the truck, and they'll release the title to you. We do it a couple times a year when we sell a newer truck, and a lot of times they will say, we're buying your 2006 XYZ. However, we have a 1992 in the back bay, and if you want to sell us your 2006, you're taking the 1992. Just bring it back to your place, and when you sell it, then send us the money. So there are other companies that will that do consignment as a regular basis. The thing you want to watch out for is that if they have the truck, you need to trust them, because they might sell it, and if they don't have the title, they really need to give you the funding. So consignment can be a very tricky thing when you're dealing with somebody reputable. It's been in business for a long time. It's not totally bad, but you have to be careful on consignment. And the picture I show you here is something I wanted to talk about. This, and you can see this truck on my website. This is, I believe it's a 2002 Pierce 105-foot aerial ladder. I think we're asking $65,000 or $75,000 for that truck. If that truck had a 1,500-gallon pump and a 300 or 500-gallon tank, I would be able to sell that truck for $200,000 or $225,000. So at the time that that truck was bought new in 2002, it might have been an extra $50,000 to get a pump and water tank on that truck, maybe $60,000. But today, that truck would be worth $150,000 more. So from a fire chief point of view, it's perfectly good to buy a ladder truck that doesn't have a pump. But when it comes to resale value, again, that truck, that's a 2002 Pierce, I'll take $75,000 or $65,000 for it today. If that truck had a 1,500 pump and a 300-gallon tank, I would have people fighting me to buy that truck, and I would get $200,000 or $250,000 for it. So that's just something to keep in mind. Next slide, Nicole. Okay, selling process. A couple of things you need to keep in mind. Setting the price. I speak to somebody once or twice a week that has a fire truck for sale, and they call me up and they say, well, we're going to ask $100,000 for it. And I say, I've been selling used fire trucks since the late 80s. That truck is really only worth $40,000 or $50,000. And they say, no, we want to set the price high and then we can always come down. I'm going to tell you, if you set the price high and it doesn't sell, the word out on the street will be that there's something wrong with the truck, that it didn't sell. So if you set the price too high, it sits forever. And then somebody like myself can come in and almost, and I hate to use the word, but almost steal it from you for a very low price because it's sat either outside and you're behind the fire station or in the back bay and it hasn't been started for 6 months or a year. You can look and find out what the price is worth. You can pay a company like myself for an appraisal. You can get somebody else to appraise a unit for you. But if you set the price too high, it sits forever. And I'm going to give you an example. Last Friday afternoon, a fire department in this area called me up with a 2001 Pierce rescue pumper for sale, and it looked like brand new. And they told me how much they wanted for it. And by 7 o'clock at night, I had sent them a contract to buy the truck for full price. And they emailed me back about 15 minutes later and said, sorry, we have a fire department coming tomorrow to buy it. If they don't buy it, we'll call you back. The price they set was very low and the truck was gone. If they had listed that truck for $50,000 more, I wouldn't have bought it and nobody else would have. So setting the price too high really works against you. You want to set the price fair and then let it be sold instead of keeping it forever. Next consideration, bidding and legal notices. Again, many fire departments across the United States, particularly in the eastern and northern part of the country, are part of their municipalities. So they're either a fire district or a village or a town or a city, and they have to do bidding and legal notices. So there are people who call me up with trucks for sale every day. And if I came down there with a check for $100,000, they just can't take it. So you've got to realize if there are any legal notices that have to be put in there or bid things. The next thing in the process is buyer inspection. Whether you're selling it to a company like myself or selling it to another fire department, generally speaking, the buyers are going to want to come down and inspect the truck. You want the truck to be clean. You want the truck to be in as good condition as possible. You want everything to be working on it, and you want to demonstrate how the truck is. And it's, again, just like a home. When you're selling a home or selling your own personal car or truck, when you're having a fire truck, the inspection is really where the meat and potatoes occurs. So if you make a good appearance on the inspection, you can sell the truck. And if the truck is dirty or has not been well maintained or has all kinds of trash sitting inside the cab, like water bottles or candy wrappers, it sets a bad example for people coming to look at the truck, and they will not buy the truck. So keep that in mind. The purchase, again, you want to make certain on how the unit is going to be actually paid for. And there are some fire departments that demand that the buyer come with a certified bank check or wire the money. These are all things that you need to work out in advance. And the last thing, of course, is delivery and acceptance. That anything that you agreed in writing when you sold the truck, equipment that's going to be on the truck, or if you're going to fix anything or change anything, make certain when the customers come to pick it up, either at your firehouse or from a dealer, that everything that is agreed, and then they accept it. Next slide. So the items to check. When you look at the truck the first time, generally it's a two-step process. So somebody comes and looks at the truck, and then 30 days or 60 days later, they agree to, and they come back and they buy the truck. So you want to make sure that any changes to the unit are noted. The next statement that I have there, some fire departments immediately take the truck out of service once it is sold. This is a consideration that you want to take. And I'm just going to throw it out there. There are many fire departments, when I say I'm going to give you $50,000 for the truck, even though your new unit isn't coming in for 6 months or a year, a lot of fire departments will immediately take the truck out of service because they don't want the engine to blow. They don't want somebody to scrape a fire hydrant, or have the door come down on it, or the transmission to go, or the pump to blow. So there are many fire departments who will say, okay, you're buying the truck, come get it right now. We don't care. We'll live in a hole. We'll call mutual aid. We'll have a reserve pumper in service. We'll do anything, but take it out right away. Other departments, many other places will say, no, we're going to wait until the new unit is in service. And in this, it can sometimes get complicated, because if the new manufacturer is a year to get the new truck, you will also find that then the truck will come into the dealer, and the dealer will outfit all the equipment, and then they'll letter it and do training and things like that. And sometimes that can take 90 or 120 days after the new truck is delivered. So you want to work all of that out in advance. The reason, again, that needs to be worked out in advance, particularly when we're buying trucks that are $100,000 or $150,000, is frequently that $100,000 or $150,000 is part of the purchase price of the new truck. So if they bought a new pump for $800,000 and you're giving them $100,000 for their 20-year-old truck, they're short $100,000 when the new truck is ready. And you need to be worked out in advance if they need to go to the bank and get a bridge loan, or if they need to take the truck out of service. So these are all things that you want to pre-work on, so that you don't get into a crisis. And again, at least once or twice a month, we get a crisis at when it comes time for the new truck delivery. And like, well, we need the money. I said, okay, good, give me the truck. Well, we can't give you the truck till we get the new one, fully in service, and we have to have all the tools mounted, and we have to, it's got to be lettered, and it's got to be this and that. I said, I'm not giving you the money. I'm paying for the truck until I actually have it. Well, how are we going to do this? I said, well, you can let me have the truck now, or you can go to your bank and get a loan, but we should have worked this out in advance. So these are all things that need to check, and just basically pre-check them before you buy the truck. Next slide. So completing the sale. And this is just the important thing, how it gets to you after you inspect the unit. Physically, how is the truck going to get to you? Are you sending 2 firefighters to the fire department or the dealer where it came from to drive it home? Is it going on a flatbed truck? The Freightliner pumper tanker that you're looking at here went to Alaska. So we had to make arrangements. We had to truck it on a trailer to the port of Seattle, Washington, and then it was met at the port of Seattle, Washington by somebody who drove it over to the ferry, which took it up to Alaska. It took a little bit of pre-planning and logistics to get that all squared away. And again, with Alaska, because you have only certain months of the year where the ferries actually run. So how's the truck getting home? Important consideration, something that when you work with a dealer, we'll work with you. When you're buying the truck from fire department to fire department, they're going to throw their hands up and say, give me the $100,000, and whatever you do, I don't care. So these, again, is one of the advantages for working with a dealer or a broker. And then the last thing that I put on here is the title and certification paperwork. You will find that there are hundreds of trucks sold in the United States that do not have correct title work or certification. When certification, I mean pump or ladder or DOT or state inspection. So it's too late the day you are picking your truck up to worry about whether the fire department has a title. So when you agree to buy the truck, you need to make certain that they have a title. There are a few states in the United States that to this day do not title fire apparatus. So the fire department had what's called an MSO, which is a manufacturer's statement of origin, and they never put that into the state. And now 10, 15, 20 years later, whoever was the commissioner or secretary, treasurer in 2000 is not even the fire department any longer. There's no way to find out where that paperwork is. Generally, if you have 30, 45, 60, 90 days, you can get duplicates of that. But again, that's something that you need to pre-plan and have that ready so that when you're picking up the truck, that you can hand a title. When they give you the check for $100,000, you can hand them a title. I will not buy a fire truck from a fire department if they do not have the title in hand. You shouldn't either. And there's handshakes and there's the brotherhood of firefighting. But when I take a truck, when you're taking a truck to your fire department for $100,000, you do not want to be in a situation, and this happens probably once a week across the United States, where they don't have a title, they can't find a title, you've paid for the truck, and the old maxim that buyer beware, once people have your money, their incentive to help you goes way, way down, and they're good people, but once they have the money, they'll just say, okay, we'll take care of it. Whereas if they know that they're not getting your check or my check until that title is there, they will go through hoops to get that. I also want to caution you that with the COVID crisis, states are still not operating at full capacity. So you will find, I'm waiting for a title from the state of Pennsylvania for a 2002, not a very old truck. I'm waiting for a title since January. Here we are, last week of April, and the state has still not sent the fire department a replacement title. I can't even pick up the truck and put it for sale. So that's something you want to make certain. And again, talking about certification, you want to make certain that there's a current pump test on the truck and a current aerial test on the truck. So those are things, the little things that you need to check. Next slide. So here we are, pretty much almost at the 1 hour point. Nicole, if there's any questions, we will take them and we'll see if we can answer them and help you. And if not, I'd like to thank you very much for tuning into the webinar. We had, after putting on the Facebook page, we had almost 3,000 people look at the program last week. And I'm a fire truck guy. So if you have any questions, you can reach me on my website. It's www.sellfiretrucks.com. There's a link to email me. The email is easy, glenn@sellfiretrucks.com. I'm a pretty easy guy to get a hold of. I'm kind of obsessive and check my phone about every 5 minutes, 24 hours a day. And my job is to help fire departments. So anything I can do to help you, I will. So do we have any questions, Nicole?
We do. We have a few. So Scott asks, how does a department get started selling with a dealer like Command Fire Apparatus? What are the first steps there?
The first step is to contact us, and I will send you a form I have, which is basically a specification sheet and pictures of the truck. And I am going to give you some advice from 40 plus years in the fire business, that you need to send the dealer, like myself, really good pictures of a truck, because that is the only thing. I buy and sell roughly 100 trucks a year, so that's about 2 a week. I can't look at every single truck. If I was to go look at every single truck I bought, I would never be home, and my cat would really miss me. My wife, I'm not so sure, but the cat would really miss me. So I look at these pictures of the trucks, and I can tell you, just in the last 30 days, I got a truck in here that when I went and looked at it on a Sunday night when it came in, I would have given that fire department $20,000 or $30,000 more for that truck if they had sent me good pictures of the truck. The pictures they sent me were they were faded. It looked like the paint had no shine to it. It looked like just an average to poor truck. And instead, that truck was a 9 on my scale of 1 to 10. So it's too late. I've already priced the truck out, and I couldn't. I priced it low because I bought it low, and if they had sent me much better pictures, I would have given them $20,000, $30,000 more for the truck, and I would have sold it for $20,000, $30,000 more. The fire department who bought it from me got a really nice truck, and they were here 15 minutes and said, we'll take it. So good specifications and good photos. But the important thing, the best answer to your question is contact. If you go to my website, there is a link. It says selling fire trucks, and we'll take them, and then I will contact you back. I can tell you that dealers like myself, we're basically kind of fixed at 20 years and newer. So when you get much past 2000, I'm really not buying them anymore, for the simple reason that they're very difficult to sell. Whereas the brokers will list anything. If you have a 1982, if you have a 1987, if you have a 1993, they will list it. Generally, unless there's something incredible about the condition or the specifications, I'm just not buying anything older than 2000 at this point. Good question.
Alan asks, what are the pros and cons of selling an engine equipped with extrication equipment?
Well, I'm going to answer that question in two ways. Up to about 2-3 years ago, it was a real pro. What's happened in the last 2-3 years is that fire departments across the country are now buying e-powered, electric battery powered extrication equipment. So I'd say every second or third rescue truck is now coming in with the extrication equipment included on it. So it doesn't, if the truck is worth $100,000, the rescue equipment isn't going to add that much value to it. It certainly will make it a little easier to sell, but I hope I make you laugh a little bit. But no matter what brand of equipment is on there, if I just got a truck in this weekend, a 2007 Pierce rescue pumper, you can see it on my website, and it has Hearst rescue equipment. And I've had 2 or 3 people call up and say, we run Homatro, are you going to change out all the connections and hoses for us? So if the truck didn't have extrication equipment on it, they wouldn't have even asked that question. So that same question applies to hose, nozzles, air packs. If the truck comes in with 7 MSA air packs, the fire department says, well, that's great, but we're a Scott department. You know, are you going to give us 7 Scotts? No, I'm not going to give you 7 Scotts. So where 5 years ago or 7 years ago, having that extrication equipment really increased the value and could get somebody in business. Nowadays, with so many people leaving their extrication equipment on the truck, it makes the truck easier to sell. It's probably going to sell a little bit quicker, but it's not going to add all that value. But I can tell you something that I say at least 2-3 times a week to customers. If you were going to take anything off the truck, extrication equipment, hose, nozzles, air packs, ventilation fans, positive pressure fans, saws, chainsaws, or K12 saws, if you're going to take that equipment off the truck and put it in the cage in the back of the firehouse, leave it on the truck. It's going to stay on it. So I'm going to take it. I'm not going to take all that stuff off. I'm going to leave it on the truck. I'm going to advertise it with the equipment on, and it's going to go to somebody who could really use the equipment. So, but does it add a lot of value to the truck? It probably doesn't add a huge amount of value. It makes the truck sell a little bit quicker, but it doesn't add a huge amount of value. But if you're not going to use it, and again, there is currently a glut on the market because of all, I'd say pretty much everybody in the last 2-3 years is just buying battery operated extrication equipment since the technology's gotten better. So there is a lot of used extrication equipment for sale in the market. And supply and demand, just when there's a lot of it for sale, the price comes down.
Lastly, we received a few questions about standard value depreciation and mileage. For a brand new apparatus, do you have an estimate for how much 100 miles would reduce the overall value?
No, it's per unit. I certainly wouldn't take it off 100 miles, but you know, I think that once you go over the 100,000 miles, then you reach a point where people are just going to be very difficult for them to see the unit and buy it. Now, that's not always valid because that same Detroit diesel or Cummins diesel engine and Allison automatic that's in that fire truck, that they will put that same engine and transmission combination in an over-the-road truck that's a utility truck that's delivering fuel oil, that's you know, hauling mail or anything else, and that same engine and transmission combination might go 1,000,000 miles, and yet people in the fire service, you know, their hair goes white or they lose it when they see 100,000 miles. So you know, I don't shoot the messenger. I just report the facts. But you know, that 100,000 is a really very hard sell once you get past that. So you know, I tell people to look at the miles per year, and if you're doing more than 5 or 10,000 miles a year, which again, 10,000 miles a year divided by 50 weeks, that's 20 miles a week. That's a little bit of running. If you're doing more than 20 miles a week, you know, you're adding a lot of miles onto your apparatus. You might want to consider getting rid of them sooner, or just realize that you're going to get less money for them. I gave you that example of a 10-year-old 75-foot Quint that had 200,000 miles on it. I'm probably going to give them maybe $30,000 or $40,000 for it. That 10-year-old Quint, if it had 30,000 miles, I would be paying $250,000. So truck looks fine, you know, a little bit. It's been used fairly hard, a little bit nicks and scratches, but nothing that would kill it. But it's got 200,000 miles on it, so they're going to get maybe $30,000 for it where they would have got $200,000+ for it. And it's strictly because of the miles and hours. And I think it had 200,000 miles and I think 18 or 16,000 engine hours.
Okay, thanks, Glenn. And thank you all for joining us for the Art of Selling Used Fire Trucks. If you have any questions, if you're interested in selling your unit, or if you're looking to browse our loaded inventory of quality used fire trucks, head to commandfireapparatus.com.